welcome to the She Got Lucky podcast.
Oh my gosh, Alicia, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Oh, I am beyond excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation because what you do and who you are is seriously, I say this all the time, but I really mean this on a whole new level. You are unlike anybody else out there. So if you're listening to today's episode, which obviously you are, then strap on in, because whether it is speaking on stage, whether it is masterclasses, whether it is on your podcast, like the way you speak is going to change after listening to Ali today. So Ali, before we dive into all your incredible mind, the way it works, I want to just really dive back. I want to go right back to the start of your business. It wasn't instant success. It wasn't boom, look at me go. Let's dive back to how you started your business and the ups and downs it took to get to where you are today.
Okay, I love this question, Alicia. Thank you so much for asking. So I'm going to zoom back to the point where I was the top of the corporate ladder. I had hit the peak of my corporate career. I spent the past, it had been 6 years, 7 years, changing from hairstylist to go back to school in my mid-20s. I climbed the corporate ladder, and I kind of went from graphic designer to doing the business strategy for TaylorMade Golf. I was launching and scaling brands, and I had just doubled their annual revenue in 10 months in a position that they made me because I told them I was bored doing other things. and that was the point. That was like the high of my highs. And at that point, I lost my mom to cancer. So this piece right here, I remember I worked so hard to get to that point in my career, and I had built so much pride around the journey, and it was just in an instant that everything lost meaning. Like making money for these corporations, it just lost all meaning to me. And I remember how detached I was from this role, and I was leading a team, and I was working with these conversion rate optimization agencies, and it was just like, none of it mattered. I did not care. So I remember I was in this place, and it just felt like I was going through the motions, and it was hard. I had to pull myself to go through those motions. I had to peel myself up out of bed. It went from so excited to, I just don't even want to show up for this anymore. This doesn't feel like anything. So I remember at the time, one of my girlfriends, we were in conversation, and she mentioned she got the certification. She was doing this nutrition coaching, and she mentioned that she had hired a business coach. And I was like, wait, what? How much did you pay her? So she told me, she invested $3,500 or whatever the price was. And at the same time I was reading this book, it was how you're a badass at making money. And there was all this overlap that was happening in the book and then with her. And I just had this epiphany where I was like, wait a second, I'm doing business things already for these brands and these corporations and people. I had actually no idea at the time that the coaching industry existed. But I said, people are willing to pay for this? This is absurd. This is crazy. Where do I sign up? I was all in. And I just decided in that moment, what do I have to do? Where do I have to go? So I'm online and I'm, okay, well, I need a certification. Now I should do this. So I'm signing up for all of these things. And I went, and I knew I needed mentors too, because let me just be real. And if you're listening to Alicia's podcast, you're probably in that space where you want to be better at social media. I wasn't even using social media. I just knew nothing about social media. I had no online presence. It was all very foreign. So I hired the best mentors in sales and marketing. I said, okay, I need to know how to do this, offer stuff and put it out. And somehow get people to pay attention to me. So yeah, I invested big. I got in the room. I was no stranger to investing, and I just went all in. And I remember I got to this point where, I built this system, and that's what it was. It was a machine, right? And I was getting taught the ads and the calls and the funnels and, put them through this ginormous sales process, and it was working. I'm getting leads and building an email list, but I knew high ticket was where I wanted to play from day one because I learned about the high ticket space and I just knew what was available. So I was really intent on having a high ticket offer, but people weren't buying from me. So I was at this place where, when you're doing all of the things, you are posting the content, you're launching the offer, you're showing up and selling. I was doing weekly live streams. I was following everything to a T, showing up, everything that my coaches and mentors taught me. When you're just doing all of the things that you're told to be successful, and you're in this place and you're kind of just wondering, when am I going to have my breakthrough?
Yeah.
When is this going to pop off? So I remember that's where I was. And I remember being so frustrated. I remember actually being sad. I was kind of depressed because at this point, I had a few clients, I had some savings. I actually had enough confidence and audacity to leave my 9-to-5. And that was when I had this pressure of, I have to make this work no matter what. I took out my 401k. I put everything into the business, and it still wasn't working. Like, I was at this plateau of, I wasn't even making $2,000. It was nothing. And then all these expenses in my business. So I remember being so frustrated and looking in the mirror, and I would just look at myself and say, Allie, you've been scaling businesses for years. Why can't you do this to your own? And I was trying to find the magic pill, the magic button, the magic solution, and I'm hiring, you name it, every masterclass, every mini mind, every course, and you just are like, what is the answer? I'll pay anything. Yes. So that's what it was. And I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. And I couldn't break through, no matter how many ads I run, how many calls I got on, how many times I presented my offer, how many times I launched the offer. It was just, that was the plateau. I couldn't break through. So I'll tell you, it had to be maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years in at that point. It took me a year and a half to make a $40 sale. And it wasn't even because I sold a $40 product. It was because I had a call with somebody and they felt like I gave them so much value that they wanted to pay me. So it wasn't even like I had a product for sale. So that was the funny thing, right? So it took me almost 2 years to even make my first high ticket sale. The next one was 9,000. So I actually finally got it working. I remember that was the first one-on-one client I ever had. But
yeah,
I was in that place and I felt like I couldn't break through. And I remember sitting, I had an altar in my office and I'm praying to God. I'm just like, God, can you give me a sign? What do I do? Where do I go? What is the answer? And I pulled out this oracle card and it said Vision Quest. So I'm thinking, what is the Vision Quest? I look in the book. Let's go to the desert. Do I go to Joshua Tree? Where am I going? I live in Southern California. So is it a backpacking? Do I go to the dunes? Is this a day trip? I'm ready to go in the garage and get my backpacking gear. And I told my partner, I don't know what this means. It's a vision quest. I'm just sharing because I'm going to go. Committed. I don't know where it's taking me. But over the next 24 hours, I get this email. And it was from those first mentors I hired, the sales and marketing mentors. And at this point, I had gone down the rabbit hole of hiring 30,000 other coaches. So I was not working with them at the time. And they were having an in-person event. And I said, this is it. It was in Scottsdale. So I said, this is it. It's the desert. I need to go. And it made zero sense. And I had no money and I didn't know anybody that was going to be there. And I knew everyone in the room was going to be doing six figures, multiple six figures, lots of $1 million earners, and people that were implementing this system that I built that wasn't really working for me. So I felt like I shouldn't be there. I felt like I wasn't qualified enough. I felt like I wasn't far enough along. So I had this very internal struggle of even bringing myself into the room, even though I knew I should be there. But you know, when you just feel that pull so deep inside, it's that soul calling. So I just followed it. It made zero sense. I booked it on the credit card. I drove 6 hours through the desert and I got in the room. And in this room, I'll tell you, I was terrified. I was not an extroverted person. I was not a very forward. I was not a very confident person at the time. And I remember I was hiding in the back of the room. If there was a closet, I would have listened to the speakers from the closet. That's where I was at. And I had this in my mind. I was wondering, I went into the event wondering, what's the difference between the people who are extremely successful and me? You know, when you're in a group program with a bunch of people and you all have the same strategy or the same coach, and some people, they just fly right to the top, and some people, they were where I was at.
Yeah. So
I was wondering, I was sitting and had my business analyst hat on, and I was thinking, what's the difference between the people that are taking off and me? And as I looked around the room, I thought, well, we all have the same strategy. And then I started to notice patterns. I actually just did a podcast episode a couple weeks ago with one of the people I'm about to mention, but there was a guy who I sat in back of, and he had worked for Tony Robbins and did his events and different things, but the way he was leading, the way he was speaking, the way he was navigating conversations, he was calling me to rise. He saw that I was uncomfortable. He saw that I was timid, and he also saw something inside of me that caused him to really start to work me during this event. And I remember thinking, why won't this guy just leave me alone and let me be in my isolated corner? However, what I noticed, and it wasn't just from him, it was from all of the other speakers. It was the people, you know, when you watch people, they're walking on the stage, they're getting their $1 million award, or the guest speakers who they have, you know, coming up to the stage that aren't the staff or they aren't the coaches. So what I noticed was there was a pattern between all of the most successful people, and it wasn't just what they were doing. It was who they were being. It was how they were leading. It was how they were navigating themselves. And that everything really clicked for me in this moment when I realized this isn't just a game of what to do. I've been trying to figure out what to do for almost 2 years. Yeah. This is a game of who to be. And yeah, right. So I remember sitting in that event, and I decided, and this wasn't the first time I decided this, but I decided I'm not meant for this audience. I'm meant to be on the stage. I'm meant to be leading this room. This room, just being in the room, there was this energy, this electricity. My DNA was changing on a cellular level. I was calibrating to this level of leadership that the successful people were demonstrating. I was rising to that level. And I remember being so changed by the end of that event without strategy, just by being in the room, that I said, my community, my people, they need this. They need this event. And it made zero sense because I had one client at the time. I went back to San Diego and I said, I need to have an event. I tried all this other strategy and I hired all these other mentors and I did all these other things. And it was more of a thing for me of, well, I'm just going to have the party. And if nobody comes, it's going to be a party for me. And I'm going to have the time of my life. And what happened on the back end of this, and this was 2 years of investing, not making any money, blowing through my 401k. I sold everything. I sold my motorcycle, you name it. If I didn't need it, I sold it and invested it into trying to make this business work. Back against the wall. There was no other option but to succeed. And I finally just took the pressure off and said, I'm just going to do something fun. This really set my soul on fire, and I got so excited. And long story short, it ended up being the thing that took my business off. When I launched this Facebook group, I went from barely any engagement. 300 people raised their hand overnight to be a part of this events group in San Diego. I broke Facebook. It wouldn't let me send any messages. People were buying tickets who I'd never heard of in my life. They had never engaged with me. They weren't even a blip on the radar. I didn't know they existed. They drove for hours to get in the room with us. And on the back end of that, so I tried launch group programs. I launched group programs for years. At this point, almost 2 years. I launched on the back end of that mastermind. I said, you know what? I'm a high level person. I had joined a mastermind from that room. So I had this new level of audacity. I'm meant to do these stages. I'm hosting high level conversations. I'm leading high level rooms. And I elevated everything to match that frequency. And on the back end of this event, I went from having a couple clients here and there, maybe, 1,000, not even 2,000 a month, to I made my old yearly salary in 21 days in that launch. And this was like the moment where I just was like, holy bananas. What just happened? What just happened? But it wasn't just the launch. And I told a story about this earlier in a client container about who I became on the other side of that event. How I saw myself, how I saw my business, how I saw what I was building, how I saw myself as a leader, not just a coach, but the leader of a global company, a global movement. I was supposed to impact people around the world. It wasn't just online on social media. It was a much bigger context. And the event allowed me to step into that. And on the back end, people saw that identity shift. And that's when they began to hire me. So it was a really crazy journey of testing everything until I finally just, not that I gave up, but I detached. And I said, I'm just going to do something fun. And that was really the thing. From there, that was the point that actually my business started to work.
Oh, there is so much to unpack here, which I love. And this is really, I said to you prior to jumping on, but this is why I started the She Got Lucky podcast, because it's these stories that we don't necessarily, when you're showing up for your client and when you're where you are today, it can often be not hidden, but people lose sight of the fact that you had those moments, you had those times where you had literally put everything into making this work. And when it wasn't working, what do you do? What do you do? What do others do? What do you do? And you wouldn't be here today if you hadn't have had that level of audacity, that level of this is going to work, and just continuing on, persisting. So I just think that's absolutely incredible. And it makes me, I already knew you were going to be a great guest on the She Got Lucky podcast, but even more, I'm like, perfect. But okay, I've got a question. So when you started, were you like, I'm going to be a business coach? How did you, because where you are today is very specific, which I love. So how did you sort of find your zone of genius?
This is a great question. So, I started with what I knew at the time and what I was doing. And this was perhaps where it took a while to figure out that translation. It was pretty technical. So I, for lack of a better description, optimized the sales funnel of a $1 billion brand. So I would look at the analytics. I was a business analyst, and I would come up with these hypotheses of how can we increase conversions in the different points of the sales funnel, right? How do we make more money? And then I had a whole team, and I would say, okay, here's my hypothesis. I think this is the experiment. We're going to run it. And then does it work? Yes, we implement it. If not, we go back to the drawing board. So I already had this experimentation mindset. And for me, when I came to business, I was like, I will help you make more money. And it was my first live stream ever. I had no idea how to explain what I did. I was calling it, because it was conversion rate optimization. And I didn't know how to make that tangible for a regular business owner. So it's just word salad everywhere. And I believe that's probably one of the reasons it didn't convert for a very long time. So I knew I was going to help people make money, but I didn't really know how or what my vehicle was. And I played around with this context of just, it was basically optimization or, sales funnels in a way. It didn't land. When I went to host that event, I actually went back to brand, which was what I was known for in corporate. I worked with brands like Heineken, TaylorMade Golf, Triumph Motorcycles, Hello Kitty. So I said, you know what? I'll just go. I went to brand energetics because I didn't have results to share. And so I started teaching on brand when I was doing events and I was speaking. And that really got me to take off in the business. And then once I started getting clients, they were asking me how I was doing events. So I realized that was the desire, and that was my desire too, was speaking. I knew I always wanted to speak, and I was doing events. When I thought about it, I actually started doing events in 2013 in the music industry in Philadelphia, and we ran the underground house music scene. We did monthly events, big parties, big themes. We had a whole warehouse. We would build stuff. We had our meetings, and it was a whole production. So it was literally event production. And when I thought back to that, I was like, wait, why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing events? So that was kind of how I really found and was introduced, at that event that changed my life. I realized that people were selling from the stage too. So I really found this niche within events, speaking, mixing the sales piece, and, still using my brand building background. So now basically what I do is I help people to collapse their monthly income into a day using speaking.
So good. And something that stood out for me as well is you mentioned when you went to that event and you would have preferred to have been in the back in a closet, just listening, but really hidden because you wouldn't describe yourself as extroverted. And that's the part which I know anyone listening will be like, how? For someone who isn't extroverted, for someone who isn't like, let's get up on stage and speak in front of lots of people. Like if that's not the first thing that they think of when it comes to what's next in their business, how did you navigate that? Because you are incredible at what you do, but how did you overcome perhaps like the uncomfortability of being on stage, being exposed, being up there when there was a time when you just wanted to be hidden away in the closet?
This is a great question. And I love it because the reality was also, and I was terrified to go live. I didn't even go live on Instagram for maybe at least 2 years. I was hiding I had a private Facebook group that I would go live in, but it wasn't publicly live. So you had to ask to get in. But that in the background was building my reps of showing up and speaking, but I was still terrified. And even in that room, I left that event. I almost didn't talk to anybody. I had that one guy that was bothering me and another girl on the way out. She introduced herself, but I really didn't interact with many people. And it wasn't really until I built this event and I built my own stage where I call it putting myself in the arena. There was something about this event for me that it was a different context than just business or visibility. It was like I was creating this masterpiece. It was like I was creating this party. It was like I was just doing this fun thing. And something about, I went, and I bought a microphone from Amazon for $49. And I rented out the common room of my apartment. And I stepped into this role by hosting the event, the CEO role of, okay, well, now we have the event. Well, I would love a guest speaker, and I would love a volunteer, and I would love somebody to do audio, and I would love to have a photographer, and turned into not just an event and not just the launch and the selling of the tickets, but it turned into me choreographing the event and me leading a team of people. And there was something about this identity shift. Now, I'll tell you, I remember I woke up that morning. You ever wake up and you kind of, when your mind is blank, what day is it? Where am I? I remember waking up like when you're late for a flight or you miss a flight and just discombobulated. And I remember, holy crap, I had an event today. And I didn't have slides for this event. I was basically remembering and kind of going off of intuition and channeling, and I had some points I wanted to make. And I was terrified. I was still terrified that day, but there was something about just, I had to do it. There was no other way. And I kind of forced myself into it. So it was the process of me going through that, leading this team, organizing it, getting mentored. At the time, I was getting mentored in the coaching program, the mastermind, but also that guy I met, he worked for Tony Robbins. So he was mentoring me on engagement and how to facilitate and how to create the state in the room. And it turned into this journey that we just went on in this room, and we were laughing and we were crying, and their hearts were cracked open, and it didn't really feel like work. It didn't feel difficult. Once I was in it, it felt right. It felt like the first time that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I remember after that event, I went to the yin yoga parking lot. First of all, I said, I need a minute to just have some time on the mat. And I have the video still. I was recording myself in the car, and I just started crying, and I was recording myself. I said, I never want to forget how I feel in this moment. I felt so proud of myself for what I had led, who I had become. And I was recording this, and I was just crying, and I was just saying, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. Mom would be so proud of you. And it was this breakthrough in my identity by doing it. So I had this conversation earlier with some clients where I said, speaking isn't just the number one wealth building tool in the world. I believe that it's the number one embodiment tool in the world, because the act of me getting in the arena, as I call it, and just doing it. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I made it happen. And the embodiment and the level of leadership and the level of courage and power that came through that, I say that this level of embodiment, it can't be taught. It has to be caught. And you catch it by doing the hard things, by doing the courageous things, by doing the things that lead you to your edge. And that event led me to my edge. It was the first time I ever really found where my edge was. And I played there. And I believe that was the thing. It was moving with courageous action. And it's one thing to invest. It's one thing to sign up for a program. It's one thing to put your program on social media, but to facilitate a room full of humans in front of you where you cannot hide. There is no Zoom screen. You can see the bottom 3/4 of my body.
No pajamas.
You have to wear pants. Shoes are required. There was no hiding. And it was in that, it being exposed. And now, and I call it in the arena. I do it with all my clients. I do it with my mastermind clients. Now it's become almost a rite of passage for how we train, even in business, how I train my close proximity clients by pushing them into the arena, because how much that changed me. So I personally believe that was the breaking point where I just got so revealed in who I was and so uncomfortable that, of course, it took a lot more muscle strength after that. But that was really when I stepped into that identity of I am somebody who speaks
there's one more piece here before I approach a different angle of, people who are listening and diving into some questions from that angle. There's one really big piece on this. Now, from the very first time that we spoke, you mentioned the identity piece as well in you being unapologetically, this is freaking me. And I want to bring this forward because I feel like it's thrown around a lot out online of showing up as you, being, unapologetically you. I remember us talking and you saying that there was a time where you felt like you had to cover up your tattoos. You had to be a certain face, a certain, identity to be a high ticket coach, XYZ. So how did you sort of come to the point of being like, this is me and this is how I get to show up?
I love this question. And I refer to it now, if it were an era of Allie Kennedy, it was the blouse era. I wore these terrible blouses that just covered up everything, and they were baggy and horrible, and jeans. I don't even own jeans. That was a whole other story, but it was bad. And I felt like I needed to be professional. So what was it that shifted me out of that? Or
yeah, like how did you get from that place where you're like, this is how I need to show up, to today where you're like, if I'm not for you, I'm not for you. This is Allie Kennedy.
Yeah, it was interesting because I believe that I was programmed to be that way through the corporate world of climbing the ladder, and I'm covered in tattoos, and I look kind of crazy. You can see them. They're on my hands, they're on my fingers, they're on my chest, they're everywhere. And in corporate, I would cover them up. And that's really how I would chameleon in and blend in. And I really people pleased to climb the corporate ladder. So I felt that that's what I needed to do when I started business coaching. And I want to say it was the first client I hired. And I'm trying to remember if there was a point before this. I remember I had a lot of friends that were really incredible, and they would help me, and they would do photo shoots with me, and they were still kind of learning, and, they would help me with my brand content. And there was this one shoot, and this girl, and she pushed me a little bit through my edge of, she said, she said, I want to do something fun. This is what it was. Actually, it was this shoot because she had a studio. She was a professional photographer. She was building her portfolio. So she wanted a very specific model, and she wanted somebody who she could do edgy, fun. And she said, I'll do a free brand shoot for you, but this is exactly what I'm looking for. And it was interesting because I never felt to show that side of me online, but because it was on the other end of a photo shoot that would have been maybe $3,000 for me. Yeah, I stepped into it and I said, you know what do you want? What's your vision? I'm here for you, and I want to be a good client. So we did this whole, I remember I had this backless silver kind of sparkly dress, and I have my entire back tattooed. And it was the first time, and I had my tattoos out and everything. And it was like a coming out party almost for me by having this shoot. And I finally had this shoot that it felt like me. We had this, at the time, there was like a little purple backlight, and I was finally in my black. I wasn't trying to wear any crazy blouses or colors. I had the silver, the metallic, the black, the purple. I felt very me. And that, I remember making a post about it. I made a post about how I covered up for so long and how I felt I needed to change myself. And I was really just reflecting after that. And I posted a picture from the shoot side by side with the blouse photo. And I made a post about it. And this was the post that signed me that $9,000 client. When I asked her why she hired me, she said, well, I've always felt like I needed to change myself for business. And I feel like you have this masculine business piece, but you have this feminine piece of this expression. And I realized that people wanted permission to do that for themselves. So that was kind of when I realized, okay, other people are going through this too. And it was just a really long journey of loving myself enough and realizing that the people who really love me they're in, and I'm just also not for a lot of people, and that's okay. But I found that my tattoos and my look and my edginess is my competitive advantage. And it's more of a differentiator for me than it's something that I need to be ashamed about. And I just really started to own that on a whole nother level. And of course, that was something that's still evolving in my own brand.
Isn't it interesting how that key part of you that you were trying to hide, the moment you allowed it to come out full force, everything changed?
When I contemplate on things like that, today I had a moment. It makes me emotional. Like it could bring tears to my eyes to think about that. I had this emotional moment today where I thought, wow, I was so resistant for so long to going all in on this because I felt like people wouldn't understand. I felt like people wouldn't get it. They wouldn't get speaking. They wouldn't get these events, and they wouldn't get it. And it's bringing tears to my eyes. And I was thinking about that because we had a very, we're just like breaking record after record. And I thought, wow, when I actually followed my heart and I went all in and I followed my soul and I just decided to be so me, in myself, in my brand, in the way I wanted to build my business model, and I didn't do it for anybody else. I did it for me. That's when it really took off. Like you just saying that, like I had a moment of that today that just hit me so hard. And now I'm crying. Now I'm crying right now because that's actually, it's so true. And it's the craziest thing because I feel like so many of us, and how, have you ever been there where you tried to change yourself or you tried to make a business model work that was out of alignment and it didn't feel good? I feel like so many people go through that and experience that. I didn't know I was going to cry today, Alicia.
Ali,
It's supposed to be fun. No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
I appreciate you so much for being here, your vulnerability and sharing this, because I think it is really just such a big moment of asking yourself, where is the resistance right now in your business? Where are you sort of conscious or a little bit self-conscious about, or, feeling like you need to hide something? Like, where can we play bigger? And what I mean by that is those areas that there's resistance, let's work with that. So I really, really love this and I appreciate you so, so much.
Oh my gosh. It's so Alicia, because I'm just sitting here thinking about it. And it's as you bring that up, the moments, the areas that I felt the most resistance, those were the things that took my business off. Whether it was throwing out the blouse, whether it was the event, whether it was going all in, shifting my business model, one that was working to one that I wanted for my lifestyle. So many of those points of resistance where I could have just not, but that's the things that always broke me through to that next level. And it's really wild to think about that.
Yeah. And you know what? I've already warned you about this before, but I'm like a visual person and I come up with ideas and things like this. But like, I'm just imagining you in this empty warehouse or empty space or whatever. And there's like one of these blouses and it's like got a spotlight on it. The blouses that you used to wear, right? And like, it's got a spotlight. It's kind of like the two opponents enter the arena. And so like, there's the blouse and then there's you. And you sort of enter the arena and then there's this battle. And like, there's really like, obviously the blouse, like just there's no fight from it, but it's like you just like absolutely taking down the blouse and what that stood for. I'm just imagining something, so I feel like you now need to go and create this visual story of it. Cool, thank you. But let's just take
text my videographer after this. We need a blouse in a warehouse stat. We're coming up with a branding program.
Yes, the arena. And it's like you versus this, whatever you feel like you need to be. But okay, let's take a bit of a sidestep. Okay. So I have so many women in my world who are so excited about the potential of speaking. And I think for a lot of people, they're in that stage of, I have a speaking opportunity, but I'm not allowed to sell. How can I make sure that this isn't just I'll get content, I'll use this to build my authority? How do I actually use a opportunity to bring more business in? And even when we were speaking, this was the thing that I had done so many speaking gigs and things like that. But the way that you approach it was so different because you're like, okay, how you can walk away with, and this is what you're specialized in, how you can walk away from stage with people being like, how can I work with you? Even though you've not framed it in this way of like, okay, this is my offer, this is how I help XYZ.
This is such a great question, Alicia. And I love this. And it's a problem that a lot of people need solved because oftentimes what happens is, how many times have you been told, get visible, go on the podcast, go do the live training, collaborate on the IG live, do XYZ. And you do it and you're like, that was great, but I didn't get any clients or any leads or nobody's DMing me. So this is something that I hear so much of, and I know it's a big, big thing. So when we think about how do we get on stage and sell without selling, well, the first thing, and oftentimes speakers forget this, is that you get paid for the problem that you solve. So the first thing when we go into a speaking event, when we go into a talk and crafting a talk, we think back to what is the solution that we're offering. And if you want it to turn into clients, you better believe that you are threading the offer that you get paid for. The solution that you provide in your paid containers, that is the context of the talk. So I always think about where do you want to land the plane? If I'm driving you, whether you're in my plane or whether you're in my car, I'm driving you and we're going to this destination, the talk is the vehicle and I'm getting you there. So I want to move you in the direction of that offer. Now, if I can't sell from stage, which most oftentimes you're not allowed to sell, this is just very real. The best thing that you can do is show, number one, that you have a problem that you solve. Number two, share your system, your methodology that you use to solve that. So most people, they're looking to solve a problem. And chances are they've invested into trying to solve it in the past. Whether it's, I'll think about even just what you do with video marketing. Maybe people have invested in content courses. They've invested in, I'm going to get the next viral Reels course, or maybe I'm going to do this MRR thing because I saw other people growing to like 1 million followers with this, we're just going to recreate viral Reels. But what we want to do is have this unique methodology, this system that's different. Right. And I know that we talked about yours and you have a very specific, unique methodology around video marketing and creating reels that bang. Right. So this piece specific is like, okay, well, if we can't sell, we're going to solve the problem that we teach in the offer and reverse engineer our talk to teach from this methodology. So as you're teaching, right, we have if you think about a talk, it's very, very simple. Story, strategy, invitation is the foundation. So if you're ever doing a talk, just remember, tell your story, the story of how you found the system. What's the strategy? It's the system that you teach in your offer. And what's the invitation? Well, depending on what you can do at that event, I would thread it as closely as you can to that offer. Typically, you can do some kind of a lead generation offer, or I love to get people in my DMs so I can have a sales conversation with them. But there's a lot of sales psychology that goes underneath. And, we talked about that. There's like all these different ninja techniques with the psychology and, the two identities that we're creating and all of this building trust. We're building these different layers of trust. We're using these story selling structures to tell the story in a way that's leading people towards the sale, building trust. We are using, I call it the trust trilogy. It's 3 layers of trust you need to build to create certainty in the buyer. So there's all of these different, when I do an event, so for something like, let's just say a conference, you might not be able to use all of these, but I have this framework. I call it the FAST Buyer Framework, and it's an acronym. And when you check everything off this acronym, it's a list. It's a sales speaking list. When you check all those things off, you're going to get a table rush. People will be at your in-person event. I do an invitation, and within minutes, they're showing me their phone. That's confirmation of them signing up for the offer. So there's a list. It's a checklist. It's all sales psychology, and people don't know that you're doing it when you're doing it. But so long story short, we thread the offer to structurally, and then there's like the art, right? You have the art. You kind of have the science. It's like the structure, the strategy, some of the tactics and the psychology. And then we have the art, which is the energetics and who you're being when you present, how you're animated and how you're delivering and your energy and more of like the stagecraft, right? So when you get those components together, you thread the offer to the top, you've got the structure, you've got the art, and you show up and you just crush it and you know what you're talking about. People are going to be like, how do I, what is, you've demonstrated, you shared your story, you're embodied, you're teaching. There's some ninja ways that we'll teach from the system that pull that psychology in. So it builds offer awareness. And there's a lot of different techniques that I'll teach my clients to do when they're not allowed to sell. We're subconsciously selling the whole time. We're creating trial closes. So you're basically selling from the time you open your mouth and you hook them in. They just don't know that you're selling because it's all sales psychology. So when you do this, it's super ninja. It's very advanced. It's actually super simple though at the same time, but just most people don't know how to do it. And you can do it on a podcast. I do it on my podcast every time I record an episode. I use sales speaking, right? So you can do it on a live stream. So it doesn't have to be on a stage, but once you master these techniques, you can just get up and start speaking. And every time you open your mouth and every time you speak, you'll go from just being visible to actually getting these inquiries, DMs, people buying. And this is, if you want to get visible, this is really, you want to do it intentionally.
And I think that's so spot on. And I love it because, you and I are both about intention. There's no point getting eyes. There's no point getting visible if it's not going to actually convert back into your business. And I really love this because straight away, Ali, when we sat down, we workshopped things and I get uncomfortable. I still get nervous speaking, but speaking in the same sense is something I've done for so long. I love it. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's a masterclass, whether it's a training that you're converting people into an offer, whether it is on stage, I think this is a technique that is such a life skill as a business owner, is such a essential skill. So when clients do come to you, what are some of the things that you see straight away? What are let's talk about some blocks, some sales blockers. So things that perhaps you're doing when you are presenting, when you are speaking, that is actually blocking that potential for people to come and be like, I want to work with you.
Oh, this is such a great question. I had done a mini training on this today and I had a few pieces of content this week. This context is really alive where I go into, you're either the one who is leading with influence or you are the one being influenced. And when you are being influenced as a speaker, and let's just talk about what that influence can look like. It can look like fear. It can look like uncertainty. It can look like I feel maybe bad that I'm selling to these people. I'm afraid that I'm going to mess up. I don't know if they're going to buy from me. So when you are the one being influenced, that's not good. You do not want to be in a situation where the audience is influencing you or where anything, social media, the numbers, the validation. So the first thing to really ask yourself is, am I being influenced? Is my power, is my certainty being influenced by anything around me, whether it's you're putting your validation in the numbers? I was very guilty of this for a long time. I didn't hit 10K month, so I'm not an expert. And you don't show up like it, right? So whether you're putting validation in the external follower count, numbers, how much money you made, or you're letting fear take the wheel. What if they don't buy? What if XYZ happens? What if I forget? So it's really important to understand that. I think when we dive into it, I'll just share these 3 things, because that's the first thing, because that can really, you can ask yourself and contemplate on, what am I allowing to influence me? Where am I giving my power away to these external, external factors? I like to think about, from there, I almost want to go, I'm going to go to beliefs, and then I'm going to go to messaging, because the belief piece is before you even open your mouth. What are your beliefs? I could go into a whole sermon about detaching from the sale. I said I was going to do 3, maybe I'll do 4. But being divorced from the outcome, we had an entire story about that. That was my journey. The moment I was divorced from the outcome, my business worked. Yes. So if that doesn't give you evidence, don't go in there. Don't go into any kind of speaking opportunity, podcast, live stream, whatever, attached to the outcome. Go in there with, I am here to serve. I am here to change lives. Somebody, and this leads me to the beliefs, right? Having this belief system of, this message is so good. This message will change somebody's life. They don't even have to buy from me. This will change their life forever. People are here. They want to listen. People that are tuning in, they want me to be here. My offers are the hottest things on the internet streets. My work, the world is better when they hear my message. The world is better when they buy my offers. Everybody around you, you from buying my offer, everyone you live with, everyone you speak to, everyone in your general life will be better off when you buy my offer. So there's this whole set of beliefs when we think about it, about what you're there to do, what the context is, having this big context around service, changing lives. As a speaker, right? This has been the way I've detached from the validation, and it's actually made me a lot more money. So we could go into that. Beliefs about your work, beliefs about sales, even selling in general. A lot of people mess it up because they think, I'm doing something to somebody by selling to them. And they think, yeah, like this is the biggest block of sales. If you think that you are doing a disservice to sell to somebody, that is a huge mindset shift. Sales is the most noble profession in the world. And you are giving somebody a bridge, a life raft to become, the person, to whether you're going from, ground zero to the first floor, or you're going from great to extraordinary and you're in the penthouse suite, right? You're changing somebody's life with your work. And it is, when I learned that I'm not doing something to somebody for selling, I'm doing something for somebody, and it is a service. That's when I got so audacious around selling and just very detached from that, because it'll change my life for a moment when you buy from me, but it'll change your life forever when you buy from me. So I don't have anything to lose. It's actually your loss if you don't buy from me. I'm helping you out. So we can do a whole podcast around that.
I love this so much. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to just make literally like a reel out of this that you can literally just save and play on repeat anytime you're about to go speak, whether it be Instagram Live, whether it be wherever, right? Like on stage, you can play this back to you, because this reminder right here, Ali, is pure gold. And this is what I remind. It started by reminding myself. I started on free masterclasses where I upsold to the offer. And for so long, I hurried over the sale part. I hurried over it because I was like, eesh. And it was really when I started to learn more about sales psychology. And I was like, this is so powerful. This is powerful. And it's ethical to use as long as you're providing something that is actually doing what you say. And this is what I started to remind myself. It's like, I only need to feel icky if I am trying to sell something that is not going to help people? And let's be honest, none of us are here. None of us have a crap offer that is like gonna do shit all. We're in the business to help and serve people. And so the more money we make, the more people we can help. The more people who join our offers, the more lives that can change. And when you look at it like this and how you've explained it just now, Ali, there is nothing icky about that. It is like slow clap, standing ovation.
This is so good. And I'm actually about to deliver my beliefs around speaking and around selling. I did the identity piece earlier around this to a container, and I was like, they're going to freak out. I think I want to record it. I'll make them into these activations. I should send it to you after this. I'll send it to you. It's called the Surrendered Sales Activation. It's like this house music and it's all upbeat, but it's just, I listen to it before I'll do some, getting live or going on, a big stage or something like that to hype it up and really get into the energy and the vibe of selling. I think so often that's where a lot of people, they don't have the belief inside of them that, oh, people don't want to buy from me. Nobody in my audience wants to buy. Nobody's watching. And that belief, the belief will dictate how you show up, the power you show up with, how frequently you show up, what you say when you show up. So the belief is just, that's the cornerstone of being successful. I mean, in any entrepreneurial endeavor, in life, period.
Look, Ali, I could literally sit here and talk to you all day. Like, there is just so much that is in your mind that is so powerful. And I've had the privilege of working with Ali because in the lead up to the freaking event of the century, Freedom Queen Live 2.0, if you somehow missed last week's episode where I actually spoke to Bridget about everything that has happened and recreating it, I've had the privilege of working with Ali as one of the speakers, and Ali is the MC and the official, like, can I say this? Can I say?
You can share it.
She's gonna be the official.
Share it. I just learned this today. Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Buckle up.
Yeah, this is like, literally, we have the official speaking coach for Freedom Queen Live here today. Did I say that correctly, Ali? Did I rephrase that incorrectly?
It's perfect. This is the first time we publicly announced. I actually just learned about this today myself. So let's go. I'm like, where's my... Oh my God.
A massive congratulations to you, but also, like, I'm not surprised because I was speaking with some of the other speakers who are also speaking at Freedom Queen Live. And after our sessions with Ali, all of us are like, what? So seriously, I just can't say enough amazing things about Ali. I'm so freaking grateful that I've had the privilege to work with her and have my eyes opened about the ways that you can speak and actually allow your business to blow up even further. It is not just a visibility. You speaking in front of audiences isn't just about visibility. And I really, really love this conversation. And I hope that you will continue this work. Go and check out Ali. Go and check out ways that you can get in the arena. Ali, how can we find you and how can people continue this work past this podcast episode?
Okay, Alicia, I love this. Thank you so much. So the best place to find me is on Instagram at the Ali Kennedy, TheAllykennedy. And the best place, honestly, if you are somebody who you're meant for so much more than just building an online business, you actually want to be seen as the one. You don't just want to exist inside of an industry. You want to create an industry of your own. You want to speak in a way that has people hear you and think, she's the mentor for me. How do I hire her? And you really want to learn how to speak and host events in a way that will collapse your monthly income into a day or even a weekend. The best place to go, we have the Wealthy Woman Society. It's our home base. This is a 6-month mastermind in our world. And this is where we really go deep into how do we build this instant influence identity? How do we craft a message that positions us as a category 1 so there's zero competition? And then how do we speak to sell our high ticket offers, right? And just like Alicia said, speaking to sell, if you have a podcast, if you are on IG Live, if you run a masterclass, a webinar, any kind of virtual event, if you want to do in person, whether it's an event or retreat, conference, speaking to sell is the number 1 wealth building skill in the world. So this is where we really go deep. And this is one of my favorite places inside of the Wealthy Woman movement. So
amazing.
Come and say hi. I cannot wait to connect with you.
I love it. I love it so, so much, Ali. Thank you so much for your time today, your vulnerability, your openness, and then just the value and moments that you've shared that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is not just an episode you listen to once. This is an episode that you literally, what we're going to need to do, you know what? We're going to do timestamps of like, listen back to this moment, because you've just come with everything and more. So Ali, thank you so much for being on the She Got Lucky podcast and just being really, really here with me today.
Oh my gosh, Alicia, thank you so much for having me. Everybody who's listening, you are a rock star. You are meant for so much more than you're doing right now. More people need to know your name. So get out there, create those reels, go take Alicia's course, create some more reels, and start using your voice in a bigger way. The world needs your story. The world needs your message. The world needs what only you alone can offer. And if you're not shouting it from the rooftops, how are they going to find it? So, Alicia, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. This has been so incredible.